Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering the Night Ghoul of Wonderland, which is the second episode of the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo Season 1. And this episode originally aired on September 29th, 1979. So yes, I am back from my summer hiatus. During the summer, from about June to August, I covered the Scrappy episodes, just so we had some content to watch in the summer. And now I'm back reviewing even more Scrappy episodes, but these are the half-hour episodes with the original gang, so you got Scooby, Shaggy, Freddy, Daphne, and Velma. Anyway, this episode is a fun take on the classic 70s TV show Fantasy Island, in that people's wishes are granted, and they kind of crossed it with the 1973 movie called Westworld, in that the gang are attending an amusement park run by robots. Mr. Merino, who is the Wonderworld's host, is a fun take on Fantasy Island's Mr. Roarke, who's played by the always fabulous Ricardo Montalban.
Everyone asks, Corinthian leather.
Anyway, enough of my jibber jabber. Let's get on with the review. The episode begins inside the Tower of London. We see a Beefeater guard and a knight in shining armor guarding the crown jewels. We then see the Night Ghoul of London pop up in a window and pounce towards the two guards.
Kind of night when most anything could happen. It's the Night Ghoul of London.
We then cut to Wonderworld, where we learn that Velma is going to have her fantasy of solving a mystery with Sherlock Holmes granted. Wonderworld is a take on Fantasy Island combined with Westworld, in that everything is done with robots. The host, Mr. Merino, explains that the robots are computer programmed and incapable of harming human guests.
Welcome to Wonderworld, where your fantasies become reality. You must be Velma. I know your fantasy.
To solve a case with Sherlock Holmes.
The robots of Wonderworld, capable of harming our guests. Their electronic circuitry makes your visitor completely safe.
I gotta warn you, you're dealing with Scrappy-Doo.
But what about Velma's fantasy? Well, that's handled entirely by our computer, which will keep it a secret even from me. Mr. Kemper will take you to London World.
And there's no way out until your time is up. I'm an antique collector who always dreamed of visiting Victorian London.
The gang then head off to London World for 3 days with no chance to leave. Accompanying them is Mr. Alexander Wellhouse, who is an antique collector. Driving the vehicle is Mr. Kimber. Aboard the monorail, the gang first pass through Prehistoric World and Outlaw World before reaching London World. There they meet the robot Sherlock Holmes and chit-chat with Sherlock at 221 Baker Street. The mystery is the theft of the crown jewels of England and the Night Ghoul of London.
Permit me to introduce myself. I am Sherlock Holmes.
Jinkies.
All ready to go.
Oh, boy.
Have fun.
So long, Mr. Wodehouse. Maybe we'll see you around.
I'm sure you will.
221B Baker Street, where the most baffling mysteries in the world have been solved.
Our current case is perhaps the most puzzling of all. The theft of the crown jewels of England.
Who do you suspect?
The Night Ghoul of London.
The crown jewels were on display in the Tower of London when they disappeared.
Come, Velma, the game's afoot.
The crown jewels were on display at the Tower of London until they disappeared. Everyone heads off to the Tower of London, and there one of the Beefeater guards explains that the lights failed during the robbery, and when they came back on, the jewels had disappeared.
Like what's he? They're called Beefeater, a guard for the Tower of London, Shaggy.
If he's a beefeater, he's gotta keep his hamburgers around here somewhere.
Velma talks to the guard who was on duty that night. The jewels disappeared, and she learns a little bit more, but nothing too informative. Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy go off looking for the Beefeater's hamburger reserves and come across a guard who is tied up. They also bump into the Night Ghoul. A small chase takes place, and the Night Ghoul ends up in a moat. Scooby and Shaggy, realizing that the Night Ghoul can't hurt them, taunt the Night Ghoul and walk away. Unfortunately, the water that the Night Ghoul had landed in has disrupted its electronics. Velma also finds the crown jewels hidden inside the room. Saddened that the mystery is over so soon, A new mystery is afoot as the malfunctioning Night Ghoul runs in and steals the jewels once more.
Suddenly the lights failed, and when they come back on, the jewels were gone.
Untie me! I'm the guard!
The Night Ghoul. Stop, I'll get you.
He's not allowed to hurt us. You should have seen us take care of that creepy Night Ghoul. Right, Scoob? His guard disguise didn't fool us for a minute.
But if the guard was really the Night Ghoul,
And no one left the room after the crime.
And the jewels are still here.
Over so soon? That's what you think. The crown jewels are mine.
The Night Ghoul's stolen the jewels again.
Scrappy, Shaggy, and Scooby take chase and soon realize that the Night Ghoul is physically trying to hurt them. Freddy soon realizes that the robot is malfunctioning.
There he is. Let's splat him. Wow, 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 wow. Like I think something's going on.
that robot's malfunctioning and dangerous.
And he's got the jewels.
So together they all head off to the Black Chapel district and split up. Splitting up, Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy are the first to run into the Night Ghoul, who crawls out of the sewers.
This time I'll put an end to your meddling.
Another small chase takes place and we get lots of fun chase scene gags until the Night Ghoul finally shorts out. Velma finds it weird, however, that the crown jewels are not with him. Mr. Merino then shows up and apologizes for the Night Ghoul's malfunctioning and promises the gang a refund for solving the mystery so fast. Velma declares she's not going to leave as the crown jewels are still missing.
Oh, Mr. Merino, the Night Ghoul robot went haywire.
Hey, he'll have to go back to the shop. You'll all receive a refund for the extra days.
But we're not leaving because I haven't solved the mystery. The crown jewels are still missing and I intend to find them with the help of Mr. Holmes.
Better give Sherlock a quick check to make sure he's still working properly. Well, I wish you good luck. Enjoy the rest of your stay in London World.
Black Chapel fish and chips.
The food here is delicious.
Scooby and Shaggy head back to the Black Chapel fish and chip shop where Velma finds a new clue. The newspaper that the fish are wrapped in has a strange article about the missing crown jewels. Leaving the fish and chip shop, the Night Ghoul shows up once more, meaning it's the real thing as the robot was carted away. Scrappy goes in to attack him and chases the Night Ghoul into the halfpenny bookstore.
Leave London World or else.
No, Scrappy! The robot Night Ghoul's in the scrapyard! So that's gotta be the real Night Ghoul!
Yeah, for your own good, leave this place.
There they run into Mr. Wellhouse, along with a book about the Night Ghoul. In the book, they read that the Night Ghoul's hiding spot is a riddle, and the riddle is the 4 faces of time. Velma thinks the 4 faces of time refers to Big Ben and its 4 clock faces. However, Sherlock says it's the 4 walls of Westminster Abbey, which has stood for a very, very long time.
The Night Ghoul is getting away.
He went into the bookstore.
Ta-da-da-da-da! Puppy power!
Mr. Woodhouse
A book about the Night Ghoul.
puzzled Londoners by calling his hiding place the 4 faces of time.
Jinkies, I'll bet that means the 4 clock faces of Big Ben.
But it undoubtedly refers to the 4 walls of Westminster Abbey. They have stood for a much longer time.
You 3 check out Big Ben anyway, just in case.
No safer place in London World than Big Ben, huh?
Splitting up, Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy head to Big Ben and immediately run into the Night Ghoul. Scrappy dukes it out with the Night Ghoul and Shaggy sets the clock to midnight, which strikes its bell. Sherlock soon malfunctions and Velma figures out that they need to rush to Big Ben. The clock soon malfunctions and spits out gears, knocking out the Night Ghoul. We soon discover the real crown jewels from the real Tower of London, which were stolen in real life, and that Mr. Merino was behind the whole mystery and he was hiding the crown jewels in Wonderworld. Velma figured out that when Mr. Merino examined the robot Sherlock, he caused him to malfunction. She also found it suspicious that Mr. Merino knew about the missing jewels when only the computer knew what was going on.
Those aren't fake, Shaggy. Those are the real crown jewels.
They're the real thing.
The clue was that picture of the Tower of London Shaggy's fish and chips were wrapped in. The article describes the same crime, but there's a TV antenna in the picture. Since there isn't one at the London World Tower, it had to be the real Tower of London.
The criminal hid the jewels where no one would think to look, in plain sight at Wonderworld.
But when the computer came up with Velma's fantasy, his plans went down the drain.
Right. The robot Night Ghoul malfunctioned, stole the real jewels, and hid them.
So the criminal disguised as the Night Ghoul tried to scare us off and find them himself.
Mr. Merino.
I don't believe it.
When we saw him in London World, he specifically mentioned the theft of the crown jewels. Then he pretended to examine Holmes, but really short-circuited him, so he'd be of no use as a detective.
Let's go.
With another mystery solved, the gang head off on their next adventure. I give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. That might seem high for a Scrappy episode, but this episode, it's awesome. Like we all know, Scooby was kind of running out of ideas with the writing and such, and they brought in Scrappy to kind of freshen it up. And they also kind of moved away from the spookiness, and they kind of went more science fiction, adventure, mystery with this one. There's definitely a mystery. You have the Sherlock aspect and all the nods to Sherlock, like they mentioned Watson and 221 Baker Street as well. And you get the Victorian era London locations, which is really cool. I've been reading a book called From Hell by Alan Moore, which is a very famous comic book, not for kids. You got to be a grown up to read this one. But yeah, kind of reading this and watching this at the same time just kind of brought me back to that era. Very cool. Night Ghoul, probably one of my favorite villains in the Scooby-Doo series ever. Not number one though. Number one, number two, probably Green Ghosts and the Space Kook. But Night Ghoul is definitely in the top 10. Very cool. I like how he started off as a robot and then a malfunctioning robot, and then it turned out to be the owner of the theme park, which I thought was very cool. A lot of fun there. And scary. Like, this dude was trying to kill Scrappy, Shaggy, and Scooby at certain points when he was malfunctioning. So, yeah, very kind of creepy when you think about it, and scary. And why isn't this a 10 out of 10 for me? Is what you might be asking. And that's just because there's too many characters with Scrappy in here. Fred and Daphne just don't have much to do. Fred is just kind of typically finishing off Velma's sentences for the most part, and Daphne just kind of usually makes an odd remark saying, "Jeepers, this place is creepy." So yeah, they don't have much to do, and I miss having their involvement in the series and it taken away kind of from Scrappy, because I'm a huge fan of Freddy and Daphne. Get a ton of Velma in this one though, because this is a very Velma-centric episode. It's her dream, after all, to solve a crime with Sherlock Holmes. And not much else to mention about this. I thought the humor is pretty good though. What did I like? I like the Scooby and Shaggy thinking the beef eaters had this secret cache of beef hidden around the castle. I thought that was so funny.
Like, what's he?
They're called Beefeater, a guard for the Tower of London, Shaggy.
If he's a beef eater, he's got to keep his hamburgers around here somewhere.
And the mystery was really good. A very kind of complicated mystery for a kid's show when I think about it, but very cool nonetheless. And again, the science fiction aspect of this, with this being a theme park run by robots, is just got my mind going and got me excited. And this, is a very, I think, underappreciated episode, very underrated episode. And I recommend, if you don't like Scrappy, but you like Scooby-Doo, please give this episode a shot. I don't think Scrappy's very annoying in this episode. I think you'll enjoy this episode. Anyway, that wraps up another mystery for me. Join me next week for Strange Encounters of a Scooby Kind. And also thank you for any likes, shares, views, and subscribes. I love seeing your comments. I get so many people commenting, like the first couple hours I put my episodes out, and then usually the day of, and then you get, my episodes are kind of evergreen, so people come back months later and leave comments, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. It makes me happy. Anyway, until next week, stay spooky.
Let's go.